How Many Dudes is a strategy roguelite with autobattler core gameplay that is superficially based around its title's question, but mostly leans into a certain slapstick feel and presentation style, effective utilization of various synergies and resources, and a collectathon overarching gameplay loop that encourages experimentation. It's bonkers, it's a little crass, and it's sometimes fun. It feels like the archetypal your mileage may vary kind of game. If you're into these types of games, if you like building up your power level over a long run, whether that be in something like Brotato or something more in the deck building subgenres, it's worth giving this a try. But its grinding runs over 100 plus rounds and slightly fatuous personality will turn off a lot of players real fast. Think of How Many Dudes as a sort of crude composite of Brotato and Balatro, but with auto-battler mechanics thrown in. It's got the 2D comic visual style and cadence of a Brotato run, with the battles being interspersed with opportunities to strengthen via various shops. And then the rough play style of a Balatro, where your goal is to make combinations of buffs pop off to your advantage. Add in the auto-battler mechanics, which mean you are largely winding up this clockwork toy each round and simply witnessing the result, and it's an intriguing mix for sure. The game's title and the drunken thought experiment it's referencing that we're probably all engaged in some version of is the pretense for your battles. How many people would it take to win a fight against X number of beasties or creatures? It comes complete with well-known riffs on this theme, with duck-sized horses and horse-sized ducks part of the roster of potential enemies to be slain. The dozens of dudes who will be potentially fighting on your behalf is correspondingly absurd, with options ranging from cavemen to cowboys, medics to mummies, vampires to Vikings, and plenty more in between. As you would expect when you have a gang of cosplaying mannequins teeing off on dozens of livestock, or hundreds of Canadian gooses, or say, a unicorn, the fights can be something of a mess. Let's breeze through how a run of How Many Dudes actually plays out. You start with one regular dude with 0 abilities facing off against 10 toddlers, which immediately introduces us to the game's crass sensibilities we will circle back to later. All battle participants have their health bars displayed in the top left corner of the screen. After flinging these infants around what resembles a cartoon sumo ring, winning handily, you get a victory screen complete with various stats and your reward for success. Following this, you will get your first chance to add a dude that brings something more interesting to the party, special abilities to be synergized and buffed. Picking our option, we are now presented with a choice of fights, with a superficially harder option having a higher reward. With the next batch of unfortunate opponents dispatched and reward claimed, we add another dude to the team, and also claim our first buff, known as relics here. These can be of general utility and so applicable to anyone on your team, or more specific to a particular type of dude, with a few relating to consumables that you can use during fights. You will see more of these as the run progresses. Not happy with the choices you have been given? A limited number of rerolls are available too. Fight, receive your reward, discover a new dude to add to the team. The cadence is becoming clear. Before round 5, you get access to your first shop, granting your first opportunity to spend that reward money you have been winning. Various consumables and relics are available here to buff your run. The consumables range from potions to revive dudes who fall during battle, various options to boost your dudes mid-fight from health top-ups to teleportations, and weapons you can wield yourself to aid your dudes mid-fight, these coming in the form of lightning and meteor strikes. And so the rounds go on and on. You will eventually max out at 6 types of dudes in your team, adding to the number each round as you go, while adding more relics when given the opportunity to. At round 20, you will encounter your first boss fight. No option to pick here, just a predetermined opponent with a negative modifier to boot. Beat the boss, get a trinket to buff one of your dude types for the rest of the run. This marks the end of Act 1. Moving on to Act 2, essentially the next batch of 20 fights that will be bookended by a boss fight, we encounter the first of various other kinds of shops we can encounter. This one is the promoter dude, who challenges your dudes to a consequence-free fight that you need to pay a stake in to join, with a relic as the reward for your victory. Any knockouts your dudes suffer here will not carry over. There are a number of these alternative shops you can encounter. The Dude Whisperer trains any regular dudes in your ranks into specialised dudes. The scavenger dude wants you to lend them some of your relics for X turns, but when they are returned you get extra relics back too. The food dude gives a permanent stat buff to whoever you feed. The business dude will invest your cash for X rounds and double your money. And finally the smuggler dude, who you pay money to bring back any 3 of a set of 10 relics in 10 turns time. There is plenty of variety here, and planning ahead of time via the top heads up display bar showing you who exactly is arriving and when can really pay off. All of this sets the scene for the whole run. Fight, end a round, claim your rewards, maybe get some new buffs, maybe bump into a shop of some kind, add a new dude to your roster. Then pick a fight, the harder one grants more money, and off you go, it auto battles for you. Use your consumables as necessary. Your job is to put together roster combinations of dudes and buffs that synergize exponentially faster in power than the rounds of enemies do. It's fairly familiar stuff to most people by now. After fighting through the 5 acts, dispatching of the wacky enemies each round as you go, and assuming you don't get your own dude's ass kicked in the process, the game culminates with a boss at the end of Act 5 before you enter the Colosseum, which is a final challenge against a series of boss fights, in this case ending with a face-off against the Goat, who can be a real pain in the arse to deal with. Overcome this final challenge and your run is complete. Savour in your victory as the dudes and trinkets you have collected during your run get allocated to a collectibles board, with silver and gold stars to be claimed depending on your success. Collect enough of these to access alternative game modes and higher difficulty run options. So, now you have seen for yourself how a run of How Many Dudes plays out, let's pick over the main pros and cons of the game. On the pro side of the coin, it's easy to pick up and play, with very little learning curve to speak of. The gameplay is rapid, with the rounds coming thick and fast, battles often take mere seconds to resolve. Information visibility is high and was a welcome surprise for me. And the collectathon features incentivise playthroughs and experimentation. The most pertinent cons for me are repetitive upgrade paths can quickly become boring, grinding through 100 plus rounds each run can be a drag, the game's presentation of itself and its style of humour will not be to everyone's tastes, and those collectathon features actually clash with optimal play. Let's pick up with those pros first. While knowledge of the dudes and upgrades which are most powerful will only come from experience, you will easily absorb the game's base mechanics and structure, becoming comfortable with it by the end of your first run probably. Some of the game's other big pros account for this. The rounds really can fly by, and as there is no mechanical skill needed to play due to it being an auto battler, you can just make your choices, click fight, then sit back and see what happens. When it all comes together, that fight, reward, improve, fight cadence is fun to engage with. The high information visibility really helps here too. Concepts are clearly explained and their explanations are easily accessed. Keywords are highlighted and you can click on any tooltip to get a nested tooltip for you to further explore subsequent keywords and concepts. This is an example of a UI actually helping you to play better that some high profile games, I'm looking at you Civ7, fail at regularly, and it's a huge credit to the How Many Dudes devs that they have got this so right. That does not mean it is perfect, there are some elements that need touching up. In Act 5 for example, the floor is a colour that blends in remarkably well with the symbol that displays which of your dudes are currently knocked out but ready to return next fight. But there are so many good examples to reference too. The dentist dude for example buffs your other dudes in battle, and his modifier is clearly shown with these needles underneath the character getting the buff from him with the number of them symbolising the stacks. The end of round victory screen is very useful here too, with nested tooltips displaying exactly how much of each tracked stat came from which source. And while just one or two of these tooltips could be written a little more clearly, in the main it's very cool to see all of this. I was not expecting this level of detail from this game and it's top work. Lovely stuff. And finally in the pro column is the progression and collection mechanics that incentivise experimentation and motivate playthroughs. There are multiple tiers here relating to the game's difficulty levels. Unlocking further tiers requires you to first discover enough of the game's various trinkets, relics and dudes, and then progress far enough through a run while using them under certain requirements, with gold stars only being granted for beating round 105 while using them. This discovery and unlock system is nice as a progression mechanic, nudging players to experience all of the game and its possibilities. It encourages experimentation. And while this comes with downsides that we will come on to, there is something to be said for giving players a good reason to stray away from trying to force whatever build they prefer for run after run. Okay, it's time for those cons, and for some these will be enough to put you off the game entirely. Big con number one is how quickly the dude upgrade paths become boring. As shown in the collection, there are hundreds of trinkets and relics potentially available in game. However, as most of these will be gated away from you based on which specific dude you pick in run, and with each dude having just 7 relics unique to them, you are going to end up seeing lots of the same things over and over again as your number of playthroughs rises. There are no branching paths available here really, you just see something good for your dude and pick it. It's a limit on player agency and you will feel this through your hours with the game. This feeling is exacerbated by the grind that comes with playing through 100 plus rounds each run, which can become a drag. Each run, assuming you reach the final boss fights, is going to take you at least an hour and very probably more, especially in your early runs with the game where you are familiarising yourself with everything being thrown at you. I will say it sucks to grind to the final boss for an hour and change, only to have to sit there for minutes watching your comp get destroyed. Your life-stealing vampires and taunting construction workers doing chip damage to the goat as it electrocutes and frenzy headbutts them to a slow and painful death. Even fast forwarding this fight, it took nearly 3 minutes for my fate to finally be sealed. The pacing of these runs could be improved by looking at the number of acts and rounds, I think, and how these escalate. Currently it's roughly when duck-sized horses start turning into horse-sized ducks that the challenge of a run usually starts ramping up and shit starts getting real. The problem is that takes something around 50 rounds, halfway through a run, and while these fights are fast-paced, no doubt about that, the grind of getting there for run after run just isn't going to be for everybody. Something that will certainly put off some people is the game's presentation and humour. Being put into round 1 of your first ever run and seeing a fight against 10 toddlers made me wince. To be clear, this is all played for slapstick and there's no malicious intent here. But if you are anything like me, you will cringe at one fight and then snigger at another. So if fighting a horde of toddlers doesn't feel great, what about calling down an orbital strike on a field full of them? And if I cringe at that, then why was slapping around a horde of goats funny to me? This kind of thing isn't even the only problem here. The game's gags get old pretty quickly. This ranges from the stilted animations and sound effects to the wacky mutant creatures you will face throughout a run. Examples like stab crabs and shotgun turtles, however much of a kick you get out of seeing them for the first time, have a shelf life that renders them just another enemy within a handful of runs. You get a last hit animation that you fully expect a Street Fighter style KO to follow on screen for. What I think is meant to be the alpha wolf noise instead sounds like an old man bending over to pick something up. The unicorn sounds like a door hinge that requires lubrication. Again, kind of funny the first time, but gets kinda boring kinda fast. And finally for the main negatives, those collectathon features are something of a double-edged sword, as they actually clash with optimal play. They might well encourage experimentation, but also disincentivize good play, and I wonder if it's a worthwhile trade-off, or if an even better system could have been in here instead. Because what you will end up finding yourself doing mid-run is having to choose between a relic that you have not discovered yet to add to your collection, or a relic that you know is really good but that you already have a gold star for. Pick the good relic and you are just playing the same run over and over again. Pick the undiscovered relic for collection purposes and you might end up with something that doesn't really help you. And that results in you sighing as the goat slaps your comp around at the end of an hour-and-a-half run, and that's just not fun. There seems to be a paradox of a kind at the heart of the game for me, because my most fun and successful runs are normally those where the least attention was required. It somehow feels good to just spam click on the hardest fight every round without even having to check out the enemy abilities, because you know that your comp is just so well set up and so damn strong. Conversely, when you are on a bad run, you know it for the exact opposite reason. You start micromanaging your dudes, using all your consumables, start checking those enemies out pre-fight and avoiding the tougher, higher paying fights you know you are going to struggle with. If you have a nice setup, then you can fall into that zen-like flow of just clicking for round after round and watching your team of dudes go. Optimally, you will need a dude for defense, usually in the form of taunts, a dude for healing, a dude or two for damage, and another for utility as you see fit. On higher tiers of difficulty, you are probably going to need a second healer or good damage reduction. Get that set up right though, and the game kind of plays itself. Part of this equation is that so many buffs pile up via the relics you acquire that it can be hard to keep track of it all, even though they are always right there on screen in symbol form. I often defaulted to remembering one main trait my build was focusing on and simply zeroed in on that. This is a toughness based build, reducing incoming damage. This is an attack speed build, where the dude's effects can trigger more often if they are attacking more often. Because in battle, if all is set up well, what you will actually find yourself doing is staring at your dude's stats up there, or your relic triggers over here, rather than what is actually happening in the middle of all this here. Because those bars and triggers tell you way more about what is going on than the big mess of the fights themselves. That's because the fight animations are there largely for the spectacle that, like many other parts of the game, fades exponentially. Once a critical mass of objects are fighting, you can't figure out what the hell is going on by tracking the bloody mess being created in the middle of the screen. Those health and resource bars give you way more useful information about the effectiveness of your comp during a fight. Are your healers topping everybody up? Are your damage dudes being protected? Are the defense dudes taking damage and dying first, and if not, why? And that renders the fights themselves largely pointless to watch past the early rounds, especially as I have encountered some significant lag when the numbers of enemies or abilities or both start approaching the thousands. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Seeing as I will be looking over here or over here when it happens, it doesn't matter much anyway. For a release that essentially boils down to a dumb joke made into a full game, How Many Dudes does well to get as much mileage out of it as it does. Some of the design of the various mechanics and their interactions is impressive, and the UI tooltip implementation, especially for such a small team of devs, puts some much larger games to shame. But ultimately, this is not a game that hooks me in for the medium, let alone long term. Its core gameplay loop just does not grab me and push me to fill up that collectibles board with gold stars, and its round-to-round cadence is something I can get more kicks out of from other games. And all of this is fine, by the way. This is a quirky game made by a small studio that I paid under a tenner for on its current launch sale, and I'm just fine with what I've gotten out of the game, all things considered. If you are in any way interested in what you have seen here, I would definitely not put you off from checking it out yourself. Thank you for watching my video. I hope it was worth your time and attention.